like get comfortable with the name. Yeah, like you're going to the public, so you know, get comfortable. But you.
Good morning. Another beautiful day. 19 degrees out. We're gonna go visit with some veterans this morning and have breakfast with them. Morning.
Hi, I've been waiting to meet you.
Oh, cool. What's your name?
Athena.
Good morning. How are you?
Nancy Brennan. I'm with Edgar.
I love it. Love and Lake. Good morning. Not only are the leaders of our country not recognizing the dangerous crisis that we are facing, they are adding fuel to that fire that's pushing us ever closer to that point of nuclear war.
A lot of us grew up under that nightmare. Remember when I was a kid, nuclear war. I don't remember the Cuban Missile Crisis.
I remember duck and cover.
Right. In Hawaii a year ago, we had an alert that went out to every single phone in the state that said, missile incoming, seek shelter immediately. This is not a drill.
I don't think we should have been in Iraq at all in the first place.
No.
None of these problems would exist if we weren't there.
That's right.
You have curiosity on behalf of your constituents, and you're willing to take big risks.
Gave me in my bag.
Oh, you do?
Goes everywhere I go.
You were
I'd love to follow up with you on both on the nuclear stuff as well as on the veteran front. Just as veterans are fired up.
Democrats.
Thank you for inviting me to
Thank
come
you
and
so
join you
much for
today.
coming to our little town.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Welcome to New Hampshire. A little colder here, isn't it?
Just a little bit by way of background. Growing up in Hawaii was a wonderful thing. It's a beautiful name. And what's your name? It's great to see you
Thank you for
here.
your service and very succinct analysis of what's going on.
I appreciate that.
Incredible.
This is an honor.
Thank you very much.
The world needs you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Go Kelsey.
The only way we make the kind of systemic change that we need to see, it has only come about when we, the people, stand up and make it so.
That's right.
The reason I wanted them to meet you is I wanted them to know that somebody can be strong without being bellicose.
That's right. Thank you for coming. Thank you for bringing a friend. This is how we win campaigns, right?
And can I take a picture as the fan? I appreciate that. You're incredible.
Thank you so much.
It is a real honor to meet you. I just want to thank you for everything you've done and everything you continue to do.
People here brought the color to the day.
Nice to meet you.
What's your name?
My name's Meredith, and I just wanted to thank you for running.
It's real. This is not politics. It's life. Thank you. Packed the house. Packed the house. They had to unfortunately turn people away at the door because of the fire code, and so it was great. Thank you.
Tulsi has provided me with a sense of hope, a sense of integrity for what our future could and will look like when we actually elect Tulsi Gabbard to office in 2020.
Aloha is a recognition that we are all brothers and sisters, children of God. Aloha transcends the color of our skin, the way we worship, where we come from, how much money we make, where we went to school, who we vote for, who we love. These things that are used, unfortunately, in this day and age of politics to drive wedges between us as people. Aloha inspires us to transcend those divisions.
I was in the United Nations when 122 countries agreed the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. There were people in the room who had survived Hiroshima and Nagasaki, who had been working on this for 72 years. And I was so excited, and I went out to buy the New York Times, and it wasn't on the headlines. It was on page 8, below the fold, with a picture of Nikki Haley protesting it. And you are putting it in the national discourse where it belongs. You're right, this is domestic. This is international. This is existence. That's right.
Hello, Manchester. My name is Nikki Casey, and I am substituting John Hopwood on his show today. And he was kind enough to give me and my co-host a platform to talk about the issues that we find very important for New Hampshire and the country, and issues that we can see that will go abroad. So I would like to introduce my co-host today, David Helfrich.
Good evening. It's great to be here. Nikki, good to see you.
Good to see you. So I've been on John's show a couple times, and I did previously have a radio show, so I feel maybe not the need to introduce myself to this community, because I think that a couple of people know who I am. So I kind of want to turn the mic over to David just to let him give his intro into the world of New Hampshire.
Sure. So my family moved to New Hampshire when I was about 12 years old, and immediately we fell in love. I mean, it was a tough transition. We moved from Annapolis, Maryland, but New Hampshire has its way of, appealing to a large swath of people. So we love the mountains. We love the ability to ski in the winter and the nature here. Went to high school, Exeter High School, public school, not the academy. And then went to college at James Madison in Virginia. Went to law school at Howard in D.C. Spent about 8 years in Washington, D.C. And then, immediately started a business in Costa Rica. Had the opportunity.
What was the business in Costa Rica?
Sure. So it was a distribution company for superfood supplements, acai, quinoa, and things of that nature. So we distributed in Central America. Shortly after that, I moved back to New Hampshire. So I returned after about 10 years away.
Yep.
And, started a small business, a search consultant firm specializing in talent retention, succession, diversity, and inclusion. Yeah. And we serve a number of law firms, global organizations, nonprofits, universities, and really enjoyed doing that. And of course, became active in politics. I've been active in politics since I was in high school. So it was only natural for me to come back to New Hampshire and get engaged.
Yeah.
And here we are.
So I think the first time I met you, actually, I know the first time I met you was at a brand new Congress meeting in Manchester.
Yes.
And it was, I think at that point, Bernie had lost the election to Hillary. And, the grassroots community was trying to find a way to get organized. And so I think what happened throughout the country was people had this energy and they wanted to put it behind something that they believed in. So a lot of different organizations were created and grassroots movements outside of the Bernie community, and that's when we had met, and we have known each other ever since, and I think that was 2 or 3 years ago.
Correct, 2016. And
yeah.
And then, fortunately for me, I became chapter president in a brand new Congress and got a chance to work on the grassroots throughout New Hampshire for them. And that was a tremendous experience. But yes, I think that was the moment where a lot of people met. A lot of people who were feeling frustrated after 2016, but at the same time engaged and energized at what, they saw the potential would be for the future.
Yeah.
So that was correct. And what was the name of that bar in Manchester? John Stark.
Oh, yeah, it's literally right down the street.
Right.
I don't remember the
Exactly,
name of it.
Exactly. So shout out to brand new Congress.
Yeah. So from there, we just kind of stayed connected and had very similar core belief systems on really specific things, whether that was Medicaid for all. I want to say education paid by tax dollars, because I don't believe in the word free, because I think that creates a lot of issues. And so, in just the way that the United States intervenes in other countries. And then one of the people that we both agreed on that we appreciated her tactics was Tulsi Gabbard. And you were much more enthusiastic about her than I was. But what I appreciated was she was the co-chair of the Democratic Party, and she saw what the DNC was doing to Bernie Sanders, and she stepped down and called them out on it, and then she backed Bernie. And then she's been, I think she's been a trailblazer since she was a very young girl. and she's got a really good record. She was, I believe, one of the youngest state representatives at 21 at that time. And then she served in the National Guard. She went on active duty. She came back. I believe she ran a nonprofit, and then she went on to be Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard. And now she's running for president. So, but there's a lot of controversy around her, and I know that I've sat with her one-on-one, and I know you have, and there's slander against her, and I think that's what happens when someone goes against a political party that doesn't go with the grain and fights for what they believe in, and then we create this thing within the mainstream media, this narrative that doesn't fit in the box that they want, which is why I think in 2016, Bernie fought the fight that he did because he didn't fit in this narrative, and the DNC had already picked Hillary Clinton, and so I think Tulsi's kind of in the same place today. So I just kind of want to get your opinion on what you think about that.
You know, it's funny because in 2016, when she was the vice chair of the DNC, the Democratic Party had no problems with her then, right? She clearly was a rising star. They wanted to nurture her career. They wouldn't have given her that prestigious, position if they didn't believe in her. But when she broke ties and decided to endorse Bernie and really call out the inequitable adjudication of the primary, it rubbed people the wrong way because, as you pointed out, the DNC really decided for us all that Hillary Clinton was going to be the nominee. Yeah. They didn't expect Bernie to mount such a viable challenge. I believe he won. I mean, he won a tremendous amount of states, 22 states, and then the primary was very competitive throughout. But despite that, he had no chance, right? The superdelegates were clearly behind Hillary, and actually in New Hampshire, Bernie had a huge victory.
60%.
Correct, but that was not reflected in the superdelegate count. In fact, Hillary and Bernie left the state with the same amount of delegates because of the superdelegates, which all casted their vote for Clinton. So, when Tulsi did that, she was actually threatened at that time. Her career was threatened. They were saying they were going to primary her in Hawaii, and here they are ready to primary her in Hawaii. Yep. But it's beyond that. It's, her foreign policy views. She challenges the foreign policy establishment, the military-industrial complex, in a way that is incredibly brave and courageous. But I think a lot of people forget she's a two-tour veteran, so she has a very intimate view of war. She knows the cost of war firsthand. And to speak out as bravely and strongly as she has against our regime change wars has put a target on her from the establishment, including the establishment within the Democratic Party. Yeah. So I think that because of those reasons, they still haven't gotten over 2016. They smear her based on the fact that she's met with Assad without ever really having a substantive conversation about what that really means. Yeah. So, as soon as she announced, for example, there were 10 to 20 think pieces immediately in queue, ready to just go out and disseminate.
And they were all opinion pieces.
They were, and they're hit pieces, essentially, and they were not fair, they were not objective. Yeah. But despite that, she has, ran such a poised campaign, appealed to people across the political spectrum, which is what you want in a general election. Not just somebody who can round up the loyalist Democratic vote, but people who can appeal to independents, civil social libertarians, even some conservatives, and of course progressives. So, despite all of that, Tulsi is here running a tremendous campaign, and we see in New Hampshire how she's been able to connect with people.
So I have to wrap my brain around everything you just said because you just brought up so many good points so I think I'm going to start with the fact, and it's very important in New Hampshire to appeal to more than one demographic. New Hampshire is very broad in politics, and we have extremists on both sides of the party, and then we have people in the middle, and then we have people in the middle, and I think people in New Hampshire try really hard to grasp the political narrative, and I hope we don't pick people based on the letter next to their name when we go to vote for them. And I think we've seen that time and time again. Because I think that New Hampshire has a really hard time with establishment politicians. And we kind of lean towards politicians that don't necessarily like fit in a box, which is what I love about my state. And she does not fit in a box. And I think that's part of the push against her, is that people want Tulsi to be like, well, you stand, with this issue because you're a Democrat. And she's like, no, I've actually I fought war and I've seen issues, and I have, I fought with my fellow vets. And, Democrats want X, Y, and Z, and Republicans want X, Y, and Z, but I've actually been on the ground. And I'm not gonna say that that's correct.
Exactly. And so you asked me really what drew me to her early, why I had such early support. And if you remember, the reason why she endorsed Bernie was because of his judgment on foreign policy.
Yeah.
And that's what's interesting here. Everyone was citing Hillary as, she's such a great mind when it comes to foreign policy. But in effect, she really has adopted the same old neocon foreign policy that has been disastrous and has produced horrendous results. So, the fact that she cited that, and why did she cite that? Because Bernie voted against the Iraq War and was actually prophetic in terms of, unfortunately, prophetic in terms of what would manifest in Iraq if we did intervene and we did actually launch that invasion, which was an illegal war, which was based on a lie. Mm-hmm. So when Tulsi, cited his judgment on that, and also the fact that he was speaking out against what was happening in Syria, what was happening in Libya, and how the results of that have been not only horrendous for us. We've spent trillions of dollars. We've had, our servicemen and veterans come home injured, dead, with PTSD, litany of issues, spent all of the people's money on these wars. But most importantly, the people there are in worse condition.
Absolutely. And that, I think that's her biggest point.
Yes.
Is that we go there, we overthrow a dictator with a narrative that we're given through our media. And I have big issues with our media and what they feed us for information. But she went to Syria on her own to see what was going on. And she's been, she's done 2 tours as a soldier, and she comes back and she can give us statistics on information that it is not better to go into these places, overthrow them, and then send our, Halliburton in there and make billions of dollars to make, quote unquote, these places better. But we actually create harm and more devastation.
Correct. And again, it's not about, people always want to say she's pro-Assad, which really isn't the case. She has been very critical of Assad. What she's saying is, for us to come in there, oust Assad, and then create a vacuum for which extremist groups can exploit. We have to remember Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Al-Nusra, all these groups are there.
Yeah.
And they're just waiting to take advantage of the vacuum that will be created. And we are actually directly and indirectly supporting some of these groups via proxy. And it's a very complicated subject that most people don't want to get into. They just want to simplify it and trivialize the discussion and say, she's pro-Assad, which is not even the case. But let's look at a couple things. First, Saddam Hussein was a horrible person as well. Mm-hmm. But there was relative stability in Iraq when he was there, and he was in charge. Yep. We ousted him, and utter chaos ensued. ISIS took over. So we haven't learned from those lessons. We ousted Gaddafi in Libya. Yeah. Now you have open slave markets going on and immense poverty, and people are in horrible condition.
Yeah.
So we have those 2 examples to look at, which is why we should be skeptical of anybody who says, let's go in and take out Assad and act as if we're all gullible and going to believe that somehow we're going to have different results. Yeah. So nobody else is really talking about that with the strength and credibility that Tulsi is talking about it with.
I think she's probably the only person running for president that actually has experience in this subject and proof. And she is living proof of what happens when you go into other countries. And then even when she wasn't a vet and she became a congresswoman, went to Syria on her own. And her philosophy is that we are not going to better countries by sending ourselves in with troops. And the money that we spend on that, we can use at home. And there's ways of supporting countries without sending military in. And her theory, from my understanding, is that there are ways of doing that, but at home, we are in crisis.
Correct.
We're sick. We're a very sick country. And, from the work that I've done in my own lived experience, I've seen the sickness. And I've experienced people, I worked with the homeless population, and there was a point where I was almost homeless at one point due to having addiction problems. And this state specifically has a huge, huge crisis. And we don't have the resources to help people, and we love really expensive Band-Aids, which is, I think, a theme in this country. It's like, let's fix this here by giving you half of what you really need, or like a quarter of what you really need.
Correct, because for every dollar we spend trying to institute regime change, it doesn't go to the opioid crisis. It doesn't go to our infrastructure. It doesn't go to revolutionizing our energy system. It doesn't go to Medicare for all.
Right.
So, we always have this calculus of how are we going to pay for all these things that these, brave freshman congresswomen like Ocasio-Cortez and Congresswoman Omar are talking about.
Who are amazing.
Yes, everyone always questions them and asks Bernie, how are you going to pay for that? But we never ask how we're going to pay for these costly trillion-dollar regime change wars that we get no return on our investment in.
Right.
So, and just one point about her trip to Syria to meet Assad, that's what we want our representatives to do. We want them to get to the truth. We desperately need truth tellers, not people who are just going to accept what the normative establishment idea is of the day to go along to get along. She put herself in harm's way on the ground in Syria to get to the truth and bring it back to the American people and say, this is what I experienced, this is what we need to know about what's going on in Syria. Yeah. So for anyone to try to act like we should not get to the truth of the matter and have people who are willing to go on the ground and yes, speak with Assad, we need to open that dialogue, because if you don't have that dialogue, it pushes you closer towards military confrontation.
Yeah.
Which of course is what the Trump administration wants with, John Bolton and the neocons still in power. Mm-hmm. So, the fact that she has mounted that viable challenge is something we should all be celebrating, especially within the Democratic Party.
But I think, we can look at the Trump administration and say, you have a military complex, but I think it runs deep in both parties. For sure. And so I'll segue into something, but I think with both parties there's deep pockets, and there's a lot of bribery, and there's a lot of money. And so these people who make it to the front lines to be able to run for president, we've seen, where they get their money from, how they were able to get where they go. With Bernie, and people can say whatever they want, but it's $27. $27 is his average donation by individual people. And even to get on to the debate stage now, it is 65,000 individual voters, and I believe it has to be 200 from each state. That's just to get on the stage. And, I get the theory behind it, that it just kind of, weans out who can, get on stage. But the American people are always going to be better when there's more diversity on the stage.
Yes, absolutely. And, I think, listen, there are some great candidates in the race. Elizabeth Warren has a lot of tremendous ideas. Yep. Of course, I got to shout out Kamala. I'm a Bison. I'm a Howard Bison. Of course, I got love for Kamala, but I have serious questions as to whether she's the progressive champion we need right now. And let's be clear. I mean, if you look at Bernie Sanders, Tulsi Gabbard, Ocasio-Cortez, Congresswoman Omar, Ayanna Pressley, these are stars within the Democratic Party and should be regarded as stars within the infrastructure and the establishment. They should be celebrating these candidates and these politicians. Instead, they're trying to thwart their ascent. But what Bernie has done is he's transcended that because he has directly appealed to the people. So he has said they may have, all of the party infrastructure, all the special interest money, all the big money coming, from corporate donations, but what we have is the power of the people behind us. And those small grassroots donations and the millions of people who want to be involved in this campaign are actually overpowering the establishment that's trying to thwart him.
Yeah.
And that is really the only way we're going to see change. And we're going to actually see a tidal wave of succession change within the ranks of both parties, hopefully, to where we can actually have political party and a system that reflects the needs of the people.
And I think he's been saying the same thing for a very long time. And he has actions to back it up. And he would, go before Congress before he was a senator, and then go before the Senate with these ideas. And everyone would, he would do a filibuster for hours and hours at a time, and nobody was in the room with him. And for whatever reason, people decided, oh my God, this makes sense to me. It just, we're hurting as a country. We're in a lot of pain. We're suffering. People are dying at a very epidemic rate. Our life expectancy is going down. People are having less children. People are without health care. CEO's costs have gone up a couple 100%, why the average American, their wage has gone up like 5.7% since the 1970s. And we wonder why we're so angry. And so Bernie he had the same narrative for a really long time. And, people laughed at him, they criticized him, made fun of his hair, and I still do, and I just think he's so adorable. I do, I'm just absolutely in love with him. And he made the way for all of these young progressives.
He did, and what's funny is that they are now parodying his talking points, which were deemed extreme and too radical just a couple years ago.
Yeah.
So, you have all the other candidates saying, yes, I'm for Medicare for all. Yes, I'm for $15 an hour. I'm for a living wage.
Yeah.
I'm for criminal justice reform. You have people now who are more conscious of foreign policy because Bernie was actually the one who trailblazed that within the 2016 primary.
Yeah.
And of course, now later, Tulsi has become the champion of that. But he has really been the godfather of all these progressive ideas that now you're seeing the young politicians like Ocasio-Cortez, they came to their ascent because they got involved in the Bernie campaign. And I think that's really an important point because a lot of people are saying, oh, Bernie is just this old white guy movement, which couldn't be further from the truth. He has appealed and really excited such a wide swath of the country from a vast amount of demographics. His campaign, his co-chairs are the most diverse of any presidential campaign in history.
Yeah.
And, so it's really does a disservice to not tell Bernie's story and not really tell the full story of how he came to power, the work he's done for half a century, and how he's inspired really a new generation of progressives.
And and I think he's just been getting more comfortable actually telling, I think he talks about the issues and he never wants to talk about himself. And he, when he went to Brooklyn, he told his story. And his story, it's pretty wild. His parents came from Poland. They, witnessed World War II, came here impoverished, and their only goal was to buy a house. And they never got out of Brooklyn, and his mom died at a really young age. And so he just, he has experience on communities that are hit hard by inequality. And so when he looks at the biggest picture, which is everyone, and he sees everyone as equal, and he wants to find ways that we can take all different communities, organize, and uplift. And I remember one of the first times we talked, I said that Bernie is the father of the Indigo Children, and I still stand by that. And if you don't know about Indigo Children, look it up. But he speaks to the soul. And that's what I love about Tulsi, is she speaks to the soul, and one of her big things is lead with love. And in the way the world is operating right now, and I don't care how this sounds, I just really don't, but the world will be better if we lead with love. And if we really look at every single individual as a human being, and everyone is suffering on a different level, And I'm not here to tell anyone how to operate or, you know, what to do. And we've had private conversations where I'm sure I'm like, David, you shouldn't do that. But you're your own man. And no matter what, at the end of the day, I'm still going to love you. And I feel that way about 99% of the people I come in contact with. And I feel like Tulsi and Bernie give off that energy, and the world needs it. We're not going to make it if we don't lead with love.
Absolutely. And listen, we desperately need our politics to be infused with higher consciousness. We absolutely need to get away from this partisan groupthink to where people are only concerned about getting elected and appealing to people within their bubble. Like, we have to create a message that's more universal, that is something that's applicable not just to all the people of our country, but the people of our planet, and that binds us all together in commonality and common interests as human beings. So, you know, Bernie and Tulsi have done an excellent job of appealing to that. And, you know, one thing that really struck out to me with Tulsi when she came to visit at the Green Elephant in Portsmouth, shout out, Green Elephant in Portsmouth.
That was good.
You know, was that she spoke about the dark shadow of corruption that envelops our politics. And that's something very real, because we have to, you know, really mount a viable challenge to that and be energized and be conscious and really bring forth people who have been alienated by the political process.
Yep.
You know, when I first became a voter, I was really a non-voter when I was in high school and college and became of age. I was one of those voters that, you know, probably both parties said, don't waste your time with, right? Because, you know, he's not going to vote. But, you know, as I got a little bit more mature and my understanding of the political process became a little bit more sophisticated, you know, I realized that really the movement for us is to not try to convince people to think like us, but it's to energize non-voters into voters and create a message that speaks to their needs, understands their pain, speaks to people in a way that has empathy and is trying to communicate to them as people, as human beings, not as Democrats or Republicans.
Yep.
And when you get to that, you get to the core of our humanity. And I don't think any candidate does a better job of that than Tulsi.
Yeah. And I'm being biased because I've had, you know, very intimate moments of just like talking with her and hugging her and embracing her. And I organized a veterans breakfast in Manchester with some veterans, and my dad was there, which was like the coolest thing ever, and Tulsi, and she was so engaged in everything, which was what the opening clip was, her with the veterans, and she was just so engaged and authentic, and she made everyone feel so loved. And then a couple months prior to that, I had a crystal, which shows my my indigo child, and I gave it to her one time when we were walking down the street, and I just said, I charged it, and I just think you should have it. And then I saw her a couple months later, and she's like, I just want you to know I carry it in my bag with me. And I was like, and I actually totally forgot about it. And that just showed me how important meeting people is for her, and like how important what she's doing is for her. And so wherever she goes in life, and I think she's going to go very far. I have no doubt in my mind that Tulsi is going to make a huge impact on the world. Wherever she goes in life, the world will be better because she leads with love.
Without question. And, you know, in New Hampshire, we're inundated with candidates who come here.
We're so lucky.
We are lucky, but also we see how politicians come, they run for president, they're self-serving. You see it right away. You see, they're only here for their own political ambitions. But Tulsi is actually here to really get an understanding of the people of New Hampshire and what we need, you know, where we need leadership. And, you know, there's really not a self-serving ounce in her body.
No.
And I think that ability to be of service to the planet, to be of service to the country, to be of service to our people is something that is just so powerful and something to admire about her.
Yeah.
That, you know, I know that more people are seeing that as they get a chance. Not everybody is as fortunate as us to have that in-person contact with her. But the same thing, I mean, you know, she came up to me and said something very real about our first meeting at the People's Summit, the Rights and Democracy. Shout out to Rights and Democracy, by the way. Their People's Summit, which, you know, really just you know, put a punctuation point on for me as to how real Tulsi was. That was the first opportunity I had to meet with her.
Yeah.
And she was just so genuine in her approach.
And she was really cute at that summit because she was serving ice cream with Ben Cohen. Or no, it was Jerry. It was
Correct.
Jerry. Yeah.
Correct. Non-dairy ice cream too, which was impressive.
That's correct.
You know, so, but you know, I grew up and you grew up, and a lot of people of our age group grew up as the 9/11 generation.
Yeah.
You know, 9/11 happened, and that was really a seismic shift in terms of world and global affairs.
Yeah.
You know, after 9/11, we grew up seeing these failed wars. We grew up seeing us go into Iraq based on lies.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's somebody in my life who I love very much who was born in Baghdad, and her family, you know, was displaced because of our involvement in Iraq.
Yeah.
And actually became a refugee to our great state of New Hampshire. And, you know, Tulsi connected with her and people, you know, of that experience on such a real human level. And there aren't many politicians who really can get into that and really understand that human cost.
Yeah.
So for me, how we engage with the world is of utmost importance, especially after Trump and his administration have really just trashed about the world and gone about it and really disrespected many different countries, many different cultures.
I just want to go on the record and say that Trump is disgusting.
I mean, he's done us great harm. You know, our reputation in the world has suffered. We have, you know, our traditional allies are wondering if they can trust us.
Yeah.
You know, we dropped out of the Iran deal, which shows that we don't keep our word. We dropped out of the Paris Treaty, which shows, again, we don't keep our word. We can't be trusted.
Yeah.
And for what? All for special interest groups, for more war.
Yeah.
And, for, you know, for objectives that do not benefit the people in this country or the planet.
Yeah.
And, you know, that has to come to an end. And that's why we need to really be conscious and scrutinize, you know, heavily candidates who come to us and say, these are my ideas. If they don't have a clear view on these issues, then how can we support them?
And I think it's really hard because I think this election there is actually like a lot of really good candidates, and I want to be like, no, I'm only going to vote for one, but I want to actually campaign for like a couple of them, and I think that's amazing, which just shows like if you move too far this way, you're going to get a lot of backlash, and that's really important. And something that's so important to you is the environment. So where does Tulsi stand on the environment?
You know, it's interesting. She got her start in politics as an environmentalist. So, and, you know, and also when you look at it, she's the only candidate running for president who marched with our indigenous family at Standing Rock.
Yeah.
To preserve our sacred waters.
Yeah.
She came to New Hampshire, and she's a surfer as well. So and I bring that up just because she has that connection with Gaia, our planet, with the water, with the ocean. Yeah. You know, she puts her feet into the ocean, and I think that connects her with the planet in a way that we need. So her policies reflect that. You know, she, you know, has a tremendously ambitious but also practical environmental policy, and you know that's something we can't afford to not be strong on. Listen, our generation, we could grow up, and our children could grow up living in a planet that is polluted, that doesn't have the biodiversity and wildlife that we grew up enjoying, and doesn't take on the fossil fuel industry, doesn't take on animal agriculture and all these industries that are just about consumption and profits at the planet's expense. And, you know, I think Tulsi is very conscious of that in a way that resonates with me and certainly other people who are mindful of the environment.
Yeah. She is a vegan. So are you. So where do you see that fitting in with politics? Because I think it's important. I was a vegan for like 2 seconds, and I was a vegetarian for 2 years. But in total transparency, I was also anorexic, so it just wasn't good for me. But I definitely have guilt when I eat meat. But I also know the impact of eating meat on our environment and factory farming and just the absolute cruelty. And when you consume that stuff and project that out into the world, but on just like an absolute basic level, can you explain to me why not eating meat is better for the environment?
Sure, and let me just preface it by saying,
sure,
you know, veganism I think is a beautiful thing, but strategically a lot of vegans have gone awry when they condemn and judge people harshly who eat meat and who aren't vegan. That's not going to persuade anybody. That's not
Yeah,
going-
so no, I just want to thank you for saying that, because when I was a vegetarian, I judged everyone who ate meat. I was
Right.
definitely that person, and it's just not constructive.
But in terms
Knock
of
it off.
But in terms of the environment, we always talk about the fossil fuel industry, but we don't talk about animal agriculture and the amount of resources it takes to keep these farms alive, which, you know, essentially slaughter animals for consumption. And you know, that is devastating the Amazon forest in Brazil, for example. It's devastating our natural environment, all just so we can consume more and more meat. There's more and more people on the planet. So it's really not about, you know, a vegan cult or trying to, you know, convert everyone, as much as it is getting people to be more mindful and conscious about what they're eating, the impact of that, you know, the footprint they leave when they consume meat, and try to mitigate that intake. And also, as a vegan, I'm not deprived of anything. I can have pizza, I can have ice cream, I can have cheese, I can have milk, all plant-based options. When you look at our planet, it's truly unbelievable. The amount of flavors that we get from plants and the amount of foods that we can eat that are both nutritious and taste great is really more about pleasure, and it's a reward. It's not a burden.
What's vegan cheese? Is it Daya?
Yes, Daya. They make.
It
we'll say
literally
they make it,
tastes like my
right.
arm.
Well, it's coconut based. It can be cashew based. I mean, you know, so I think it's exciting to really, you know, look at the options, but also, you know, I want our children and our children's children to grow up in a planet that's sustainable, that respects animals, respects our planet's health. And we can't do that if we continue on this course.
No, I mean, we're just not going to make it. It's just not sustainable what we're doing and the way we've been living for, I mean, it's been going on. The way we've been really living, especially with, you know, the amount of cars on the road, with the technology we use, with the way we're consuming meat, with the way that, you know, we throw away plastic bottles, we're just not going to make it.
No, we're not. And, you know, I wanted to say something about that. We can do a lot of things locally, though. In Portsmouth, Joshua Denton is a local, I believe he's on the Portsmouth Council, and he introduced an idea to ban plastic bags in Portsmouth. And that's something that we need to have happen all across the state. We need to just say as communities that we are no longer going to accept that our grocery stores just give people plastic and contribute to this problem that we know is just getting out of control.
And if California can do it, we can do it.
For sure. I mean, New Hampshire has a lot of people who are into conservation, who really care about the environment. Really care about our drinking water, which, as we know, is a big issue right now. We have high childhood cancer rates, and it's about our environmental integrity. So this is, you know, and if there is an existential threat, it's not from Assad, it's from our environment and the challenges of climate change and, you know, the urgency to act right now about changing this course.
And then I think the thing is, like, people worry about money. You know, all these things it costs money. But if we take care of, you know, I think we're so afraid of prevention. And going back to what I said earlier about those really expensive Band-Aids, we're so afraid of prevention because we're told that, well, you can take, and I'm guilty of it. I've been on lots of different medications to deal with my business. And I was told, well, and, you know, take this pill, or do this, do that, go to this rehab, do this. And, you know, I think there may have been a better way to deal with the situation. And there was a lot of money spent where it didn't necessarily need to be. And I think our country is almost allergic to prevention.
Definitely. And I think we just have a lack of original ideas and critical thinking, too, from our leaders.
Oh, I like that.
You know, I think that, you know, one of the most outstanding aspects of Bernie, for example, is how he so simply and clearly articulates why we need Medicare for all. And, you know, what he says and what Tulsi says and other people now who are also adopting the Medicare for all jargon are saying, you know, the cost of our healthcare system is immense, but the results we get are really poor, inadequate. In fact, you know, obviously the only major nation on earth that doesn't provide universal health care. And because of that, we allow the pharmaceutical industry to control prices. We allow insurance companies to speculate and push costs up to the point where we just don't have a fair system. And it's not about health. It's not about preventing people from getting ill. It's about profiting off the system. And, you know, listen, I deeply believe in an innovative economy. You know, I think this whole concept, are you a capitalist or a socialist, is nonsense. You don't have to have this false duality and false dichotomy of ideas. We should adopt the greatest ideas of both of them. So we have aspects of socialism we all love.
Yeah.
People in this country love Social Security. We love kindergarten. We
do love, and we should love kindergarten.
Right. But we also love aspects of capitalism. We love the innovation of our free market. Look, we love think about what's going on with tech companies and how we all benefit from it. So, we have now Tesla's trying to create the Tesla loop to go to DC to New York in an hour. We want to encourage that innovation. Yeah. But we can't do it in a way where you have billionaires running the show while so many people are in poverty and so many people are struggling. Mm-hmm. So, Bernie has really articulated that in a way that resonates with people, and absolutely, we have to have that.
And Bernie is a numbers man, and I've been listening to Bernie for years, and he gives a speech and you hear it and you know what the next speech is going to sound like, and then but I think there is a science behind it. Sorry, I think I have something in my eye. That he says, he repeats himself. This is the facts, and now people are repeating what Bernie has been repeating for 30 years because he has stuck to his agenda. And there's a genius behind that. And so I think we can have, and I really appreciate what you just said, that, we can have the best of both worlds, but we will never have a healthy capitalist society if we keep operating the way that we are, where all this money is being funneled. And there is no, we have this theory of trickle-down effect. It does not exist.
Correct.
Our engine, which is the middle class, is dying. Mm. And I am a child from the middle class, and I've seen my parents, really fight my dad just retired, my mom's going to be retiring soon, just to be comfortable from working for so long. And they're lucky that, they had jobs that they could do that. But there are people who, you go to a grocery store, who's bagging your groceries? Like a 75-year-old man. Right. It's either a 17-year-old or a 75-year-old man. Why is he still working?
Right. Well, the measure of a great society is how it takes care of its poor, its elderly.
Yep.
And the vulnerable people in it. And we fail miserably at that. Mm-hmm. And, I'm glad you brought that up because, I moved around 5-6 times when I was a kid. My parents were middle class and we were looking for the best opportunity. And, I just saw how difficult it was to maneuver around that. And not everyone is given an opportunity to really thrive and be abundant in our society, and that's a real shame. I mean, when the top 10th of the 1% own more wealth than the bottom 90%,
oh my God, you sound like Bernie
that is an absolute travesty. Mm-hmm. There's no excuse for that, and that's why when people criticize Ocasio-Cortez for talking about the marginal tax rate, why should we have people who are earning billions and billions of dollars when we have so much poverty? Yeah. We all engage in the social contract when we are in a society together. And, if we don't take care of people on a base level, we won't have an abundant society.
And I think people view her as an extremist. But I think what happens when you have starved your country of its basic needs, and there's so much poverty, and then a billionaire becomes president, you're going to have these people coming out saying, no, we're going to tax you, we're going to fight for the new Green Deal, we're going to fight for Medicaid for all, for a living wage, not even just $15 an hour. And Bernie got the richest man in the entire world to pay his employees $15 an hour. And that's what happens when you go so far to one side and your country is so sick. And we're sick on a lot of different levels. And I love my country, and that's why I sit here and I do the things that I do because I really believe in the American dream. Yes. I believe in my country. I love my country. I really do. I really love my country. But when I see people like Trump become president and do what he's doing and just spew hatred and starve people of basic needs, and then you have these young people come out and these women of color, and they scare older white men, and I love it. And that's exactly the revolution we need.
I think it's funny because when they characterize Bernie or Tulsi or Alexandria as extreme, they're really moderate in terms of when you look at where Europeans are at and their policies just on basic social programs. I mean, these are not extreme. We want people to be educated, healthy, and we want them to have clean food and water.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's so radical and extreme, right? What we have now is extremism. We have an administration that is fomenting for war, that is pushing for war with Iran right now. We have an administration that is putting children against their parents, ripping them out and putting them in cages. We have an administration that is xenophobic, homophobic, racist, and does not represent the vast diversity of our country. That's extreme.
Do you believe our president is a racist?
Yes, I do.
Me too. He's the worst.
No, he is.
He's horrible.
I think he's actually an unabashed racist. I think that's, part of his appeal is that he tells it like it is, and then he speaks in a way to where some people feel like they can vent their frustrations through him. But what I would ask people is this: are you better off since Donald Trump's been president? He's a fraud. He was supposed to come in and help working class people. He knows nothing about what it means to be working class. He's a billionaire. He's an oligarch. He goes to Clinton weddings. He hangs out with Oprah. I mean, he hangs out with Putin and Netanyahu and MBS, and they create deals all over the world, and just engage in an oligarchy, which is as corrupt on its face as you could get. It's almost a caricature of corruption. Yet this is the man, the billionaire class fraud, who tried to sell people Trump University and Trump steaks, and is now trying to sell you an administration which is making people worse off than they were before. I also
feel like he doesn't even want to be our president. I don't feel he cares about the country. I don't think he's patriotic. And I think when he ran, and he also ran on being a racist, asking Obama for his birth certificate. Pure racism. Like, right. I mean, that's he ran on the idea of racism.
People forget that his political start came with birtherism.
Yeah.
It came with saying, we need to see his birth certificate, and that is how he rose to fame within the Republican Party.
And he was a registered Democrat for 20 years.
He just wants power.
He wants power. He is not a Republican. He is not a Democrat. What he is a con artist, a racist. And I think he actually is not patriotic. And I hear all of these comments where people are like, well, God, wanted Trump to be president. And a God of my understanding operates from peace and love. So I'm very confused by that.
Right. Well, it's funny. Listen, a lot of the people who have grievances, it's understandable. People are hurting. They see that politicians in both parties have done them harm, have not come to their aid.
Yeah.
But let's be real here. We need to be critical. Look at the policies of what Bernie Sanders and Tulsi Gabbard, look at what they're promoting.
Yeah.
Look how those would benefit these people who have legitimate grievances. Yeah. Look how Donald Trump has conned them into thinking he would do something for them, but he hasn't.
Yeah.
So, we have to, as a people, as a nation, we have to come together and understand that, there are candidates who are running now who will be of great assistance to our country and our planet, or there's more of the same. And quite frankly, I don't know if we can really survive another 4 years of Donald Trump.
No, I don't think our country can, and I don't think the world can. And part of how we got here has nothing to do with Donald Trump. It's the way we've been living, and it's the two-party system. And we, at some point, have been so conditioned to this idea that we have to, vote this way or this way. And we have to buy this phone, and we have to do this, and wear this, and for women, don't even get me started on that. And this all happened before him, but he has just he is the product of what we've been fed for so long, and this is literally do or die. This is it. So, any last thoughts? We have a couple moments left.
The last thoughts are, first of all, I'm thankful to be here. I'm thankful to be in New Hampshire where we get a chance to interact with these politicians. And I'm thankful to the people, who are here, who are engaged, and more people are getting involved in the political process. I think that's encouraging. A lot of people speak about doom and gloom. I'm very optimistic about where the future of our country is going and the future of our planet. But we must have succession planning. The Democratic Party can't continue to keep the same people in leadership decade after decade with zero succession planning. We need progressives, not just as Democrats, but as independents and Republicans, to take over the political process.
So I just want to thank John Hopwoods for allowing me and David to kind of take over his show today, and I hope he doesn't get in trouble for the things that we said. And we will do our best to come back and have these conversations, more of them, and we could get more on a local level. And I just want to thank Manchester, and hopefully you will see us again soon.
Thank you. Good evening.